closer, breathe in the light. Morning hum in the garden high. Every wing has a story to tell. Every root knows how to heal. We listen, we learn, we gather and grow. Where the bees and the wild things know.
Hello, bee enthusiasts. Welcome back to the Attic Bee Podcast. I'm your host, Jody Schramm. Today, we're talking about the summer solstice, which will occur on June 21st, which is this Sunday, 2026. It's one of the most remarkable moments in the natural year. For many people, the summer solstice means longer days, warmer weather, pool parties, and the official start of summer. It is a happy time for those of us who love the heat and laid-back, beachy vibes. But beneath those familiar experiences lies something a little more significant. The solstice marks a turning point in the natural world. It's a moment when the sun reaches its highest point in the sky, daylight stretches to its greatest length of the year, and countless living things, from wildflowers to birds to honeybees, respond to subtle changes that have been unfolding for months. For beekeepers, the summer solstice is often bittersweet. It arrives during a season of abundance, yet it also signals that the colony's priorities are beginning to shift. While the human eye sees endless summer days ahead, the bees already know something crucial. The days will now begin to grow shorter. So let's explore what the summer solstice actually is, how ancient cultures celebrated it, what happens in nature during this seasonal transition, and why the solstice holds such significance inside a honeybee colony. If you've ever watched where the sun rises or sets throughout the year, you may have noticed that its position gradually shifts. At the summer solstice, that movement reaches its northernmost point in the northern hemisphere before reversing direction. It is the longest day and shortest night of the year. And importantly, the solstice is not the hottest day of the year. Many people assume it is, but the warmest temperatures typically arrive weeks later because the land and oceans continue absorbing and storing solar energy. So if you think of it this way, the solstice is the moment when the sun's annual climb reaches its peak. Nature then begins a slow descent toward autumn, even though summer itself is really just beginning. That paradox is one of the reasons the solstice has fascinated humans for thousands of years. It represents both fullness and transition, maximum light, the height of growth, and the beginning of change. Long before calendars and smartphones told us what day it was, people looked to the sky. What they observed were how the movements of the sun determined planting seasons, harvest times, migration patterns, and survival itself. Many ancient cultures treated the summer solstice as a sacred event. Of course, one of the most famous examples is the prehistoric monuments of Stonehenge. Thousands of years ago, its massive stones were carefully aligned so that the rising sun on the summer solstice would shine directly through key points within that structure. Even today, people gather there before dawn to watch the sunrise. In ancient Europe, solstice celebrations often included bonfires. Fire symbolized the power of the sun. Villagers would gather around large communal fires, dancing and singing and celebrating the abundance of the growing season. In Nordic cultures, what eventually became known as midsummer remains one of the most cherished seasonal celebrations. People decorate with flowers and wear floral crowns. They feast outdoors and spend time with family and friends beneath nearly endless daylight. For many indigenous cultures around the world, the solstice was not merely a celebration, but also a time of gratitude and relationship. The longest day provided an opportunity to honor the sun, the land, the animals, and the interconnected systems that sustained life. I think what fascinates me about these traditions is that most of them share a common theme. They were focused on appreciating what already exists. At the height of abundance, people paused. They noticed and gave thanks. To me, that's probably the most important lesson the solstice still offers us today, because rarely do we need more of anything. Instead, we can truly appreciate what we already have and even share it with others. Today, the solstice celebrations take a lot of different forms. Some communities host festivals featuring music, dancing, food, and cultural traditions. Others participate in yoga gatherings at sunrise. Nature enthusiasts hike, paddle, camp, or simply spend extra time outdoors. For gardeners, the solstice often feels like a celebration of everything that has come into bloom. And for photographers, it offers extended golden hours, capturing those beautiful sunrises and sunsets. For families, it may mean cookouts, trips to the beach, and longer evenings spent together outside under the stars. Many people also create personal rituals. For the summer solstice, some people write gratitude lists. Others set intentions for the second half of the year. Some meditate outdoors at sunrise or sunset. As a nature therapy guide, I find that the solstice is an ideal time to engage in a simple practice of noticing. Noticing what has grown, noticing what is flourishing, noticing what feels abundant in your life, and also noticing when you may need rest. Nature never remains at its peak forever, and the solstice reminds us that every season contains both arrival and departure. While humans gather for festivals and celebrations, the natural world is extraordinarily busy. Many wildflowers are reaching their peak bloom. Pollinators are working at full capacity. Birds are feeding their young that hatched earlier in the spring, and trees are generating tremendous amounts of energy through photosynthesis. The landscape appears lush and full. Yet, subtle shifts are already underway. Many spring wildflowers have completed their life cycles at this point. Some birds have already finished their first nesting attempts. Certain plants begin redirecting energy toward seed production. The solstice marks a transition from growth toward maturity. Nature moves from expansion into preparation, and it's a gradual process. You won't see dramatic changes overnight, but they have begun. The natural world is quietly preparing for seasons that still seem far away. But I want to turn our attention to the bees. If you were to open a healthy hive around the summer solstice, you would likely find a bustling colony operating at full speed. The queen is still laying thousands of eggs per day. Workers are gathering nectar and pollen from countless flowers. Wax is being produced, honey is being stored, brood is developing. The colony population is usually at or near its annual peak. From a beekeeper's perspective, this is often one of the most exciting times of the year. The hive is vibrant and productive. And at the same time, the bees are already responding to the changing length of daylight. Even though summer has only just begun, the colony recognizes that the annual cycle has reached a turning point. Honeybees are masters of seasonal awareness. Obviously, they don't rely on calendars, but instead they rely on subtle environmental cues. Length of day, temperature variations, nectar availability, and pollen resources all influence colony behavior. The summer solstice is one of those cues. One of the biggest misconceptions among new beekeepers is that colonies continue building indefinitely throughout the summer. I know I struggled with that one. In reality, though, colony growth follows a seasonal curve. Spring is the season of great expansion, where the queen increases egg production, workers rear large numbers of young bees, Colonies prepare to reproduce through swarming. Resources are abundant, everything is geared toward growth. But after the solstice, many colonies gradually begin shifting priorities. The queen's egg laying often slows compared to peak spring rates. The colony becomes increasingly focused on storing resources. Workers begin preparing for future scarcity. In other words, the hive transitions from expansion to conservation. The bees understand something that humans often resist, which is abundance is temporary. And because it is temporary, preparation matters. The summer solstice also coincides with important changes in nectar availability. Depending on where you live, major nectar flows may be peaking, slowing, or ending. Here on Maryland's Eastern Shore, the exact timing varies depending on weather conditions like rainfall, the local forage, and the agricultural crops that have been put in the ground. But many beekeepers notice that the frantic pace of spring begins to moderate a little after the solstice. Certain nectar sources fade while others emerge. The composition of incoming nectar completely changes, and that alters the color and flavor of the honey being produced. Honey produced early in the season often tastes very different from the honey produced later in the summer. And for beekeepers harvesting honey, the solstice often serves as a reminder to pay close attention to colony stores and forage conditions. The landscape is changing, and the bees respond to it accordingly. Beekeepers have to adapt to those changes as well. And sometimes that means providing water sources during a drought. It might mean offering supplemental sugar syrup during a nectar dearth. And it's always watching for small hive beetles and testing for varroa mites. And honeybees aren't the only pollinators affected by seasonal change. Native bees, butterflies, moths, beetles, even flies and hummingbirds are all responding to shifting patterns of light and blooms. Many native bee species have life cycles closely synchronized with specific flowering plants. Some species emerge for only a few weeks each year. Others are already producing the next generation that will survive until the following season. The summer solstice highlights how deeply interconnected these relationships are. Flowers and pollinators are engaged in a conversation that has evolved over millions of years. One blooms, the other arrives. Seeds form, food webs continue. Life perpetuates itself in amazing ways. I think one reason the summer solstice resonates so deeply with people is that it mirrors experiences we all have throughout our lifetimes. There are seasons for striving, seasons of building, seasons of becoming. And then there are moments when we realize we've arrived somewhere, maybe not permanently, but meaningfully. The bees teach us that reaching a peak is not the end of the story. It's simply part of the cycle. After growth comes stewardship. After abundance comes preparation. After expansion comes reflection. We often celebrate beginnings, but nature teaches us to also honor transitions, and the solstice is one of those transitions. If you'd like to find a way to celebrate the summer solstice in a simple way, you might consider this practice. Find a place outdoors. It could be a garden, a park, a forest trail, or just your own backyard. Sit quietly for a few minutes. Notice the sunlight. Notice the insects moving through the landscape. Notice the flowers that are blooming. Then ask yourself these 3 questions. What's flourishing in my life right now? What abundance may I be overlooking? And what should I begin preparing for next? And the answers don't need to be dramatic or overly philosophical, but they should be honest. I think the bees would approve. They always pay attention to what is present. They respond to reality, and in doing so, they survive and thrive as a collective. We often describe the summer solstice as the longest day of the year, but I think it's more accurately described as a turning point. For humans, it's a chance to celebrate light, community, and gratitude, being outdoors surrounded by the abundance of nature. For nature, it marks a subtle shift from growth toward maturity. For honeybees, it signals that the season of expansion is giving way to the season of preparation. And for all of us, it offers a reminder that life moves in cycles. Nothing blooms forever. Nothing rests forever. Every season has its purpose. As you move through these long summer days, I hope you take a few minutes to observe the pollinators around you. Watch a bee move from flower to flower. Notice how fully engaged it is with the task at hand. They're not worried about yesterday. They're not anxious about what's happening 6 months from now. They're busy responding to the season they're currently in. And that's a great solstice lesson for all of us. Thank you for joining me on the Attic Bee podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend. You can also subscribe to my monthly newsletter through my website, atticbeellc.com. Until next time, I hope you find moments of wonder, connection, and renewal in the natural world around you. Take good care of yourself, take good care of each other, and take good care of those pollinators.
As the day settles back into green, let the quiet stay with you. Tend the small things, rest and remember the high